everybody? Welcome to episode 17 of Spike Drop. Kickedtripod, Yiska, and Volamel here. And a special guest. We got one on the show today. DoctorNo, coming all the way from... We actually didn't talk about where specifically you are from.
SoCal native, West Coast, Best Coast. I'm from La Mirada.
Okay, fair enough. I'm up in San Jose, so... Yeah.
Okay, not too far away.
We share a shoreline, I think, is about where we get there. So, well, hey, welcome to the show. Super happy to have you. Have we, Joe Yiska, have we had a guest on the show yet?
Yes.
You guys had Ryan Central on, but I was.
Oh yeah, we had Ryan on. Did we have Avril on early on?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
We remember all of our guests. You're going to be the first one we remember. This is I commit to you. Be the first one we remember. Before we get started, we want to get to know you a little bit. But before we do, big thank you to everybody hanging out with us today. If you like the show, please do subscribe. Twitch.tv/Kickedtripod. Go to our YouTube, youtube.com/SpikeDrop. Leave us a 5-star iTunes review on iTunes, or follow us on Twitter, I think, at Spike Drop, and tune in live on Fridays. Okay, that's it. So, DoctorNo, tell us about yourself a little bit. So for those who aren't familiar with you from doing things with League of Legends in Japan, kind of build us a base here, build us a lens.
So my name is DoctorNo, or Mitchell, and I've been in esports. I've been in like mainstay esports since about like 2016. I used to run CS:GO tournaments out of ESA, and I used to do sidebar casting for some of the games. They had one official caster for like their mainstream, and they never had like a side stream or anything. And all the there's probably about like 12 or so teams that would show up, and I would do map bans, set up maps, set up servers, get everyone peripherals. And then, like when I had downtime, they were like, hey, like, can we go on stream? Oh, can we go on stream? And I was like, oh no, sorry, I don't make the bracket, like, different things. But then they were just like, do you want to cast? And before that, I was casting like FGC tournaments. I used to go to like Street Fighter 4 locals. I used to go to Marvel locals, Melee locals, and I was like, yeah, sure, why not? I'd love to do it. And I used to do that for a couple people just to like give them something to have. It was like it was like almost VOD review, I guess, but I fell in love with casting around that time. And ever since then, it was just like, I want to hunt for the next opportunity. So whatever tournament I could get my foot in the door of, like, with Super Smash Bros. Melee was like my home. That's where I started. That's where I think my heart will always be. But then on to bigger and better things. Now I am doing casting for Valorant at every opportunity I can get. But my mainstay and what is coming up for me this weekend is League of Legends for the Japan Pro League. And they're in playoffs right now. Playoffs start for everyone in NA. It will start Saturday night. PDT is around like 9 p.m. for us, but it's Sunday for them. If you guys are, League of Legends fans, if you guys are interested in that, that's going to be super fun. Some really exciting storylines coming out, but everything I can get in, I'm always trying, I'm always hungry. And right now, Valorant, everything about it was exciting to me. The stories that were coming out, and I was like, I got to get a part of this.
Sounds like the esports grind to me right there. whatever we can do.
Yep. So just any opportunity, you throw me a bone, I'm taking it.
Fair enough. Well, let's get started and let's just hop in. We're going to do kind of a normal show today, going through the things, but we're going to spend some extra time on the Allied Esports Odyssey event, including the qualifiers, which you casted with Joshi, right? So
yeah.
He's a good friend.
That's a lot of hair for a broadcast.
That is a lot of hair for the broadcast.
It was a lot of fun. I got to cast with Ask Joshi. Huge shout out to Phil30. He was the observer with us. And honestly, huge shout out to observers because they put in a lot of work behind the scenes to try to make all the matches happen and everything. And it's not easy. I cannot make sure that I'm getting all the action like they can. So huge shout out to him.
Awesome. All right. Oh, that's enough of the formalities. Let's jump into the news. Talk about the first, or I guess the fifth installment of Ask Valorant. So, okay. Ask Valorant, if you haven't listened to the show ever, we've kind of gone through his blog posts, find the interesting stuff, because Valorant is a very early game and very early esport, which means that there's a lot of questions. And generally, I think Riot's done a pretty good job at providing answers. And so we take a little time when they come up and talk about them on the show. That's what we're doing today. Let's go to this first one right away. Right away, the hard-hitting question. I heard someone at Riot once say that abilities don't kill in Valorant, but there are clearly ones that do, like Raze. Are you breaking your promise? Morello, who is the character design lead, did respond to this one and basically owned up to the mistake a little bit. It was like, I think we miscommunicated on the intent of our response for that. There's guns provide a vast majority of the kills, and even our damage abilities are designed with the goal of creating threat. If the promise was that abilities can never kill was the thing that made you come to try Valorant, we're sorry if we misled you, even unintentionally, but our position is, and has been, that abilities that deal damage are a core part of a tactical games, whether it be Valorant or other tech shooters. We can unpack this topic more in the future if you're interested. Joseph, actually Yiska.
Yeah.
It looks like you were ready to say something here. How do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, can we remember who said that? I think it was the CEO or something of Riot Games. And
you're saying Trendemir said this?
No. There's some other guy that took over, I think. And what does he really have to do with game design?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Now, a game designer will then also not thrash his CEO. And I'm not sure if it's a CEO. It's a higher management.
Just some sort of, higher up.
So, I mean, it's very easy to have a miscommunication. It felt like a pretty, like the person who said this didn't sit there and try to, for 5 minutes, find the exact wording of where this should go. But it's equally valid to then, like, for players to latch onto it. And it's good that we're kind of getting away from that definition relatively early, even though, like, I think there is a thing about miscommunication, and very often I feel like game design fails at fulfilling expectations that were clearly set. So I think some people will be let down by that. But then again, like, if you look at the first beta footage you see,
sure,
and then you see Raze, I'm sorry, but like, that very clearly communicated where this game is going, and it was unlikely that based on a tweet like that would ever go away. Now, of course, Raze, if you guys remember, was a little overtuned at that time.
Tunades, baby, tunades.
So yeah, it's, I mean, we moved away from that rather than that. So if your gameplay prior was even reset towards the point of just saying, okay, we're actually killing less with abilities now, even though not considerably so. And the thing that I kind of, it's also like, I think Morello had a comment like, what we meant was, we kind of expect people to either like fail to dodge the event and then you die, and that's kind of your fault, or you're going to be like forced out of the hiding spot, and then you're forced to peek, and then you will die through gunplay, which felt like a probable way to say this, but it was very clearly also some aspect of, okay, we failed mildly in the framing of this one tweet.
Mitchell, what do you think from the perspective of that definitely, for people who are literalists, and they took that comment to mean that abilities essentially can't do damage, because that's any ability that does damage is going to kill people. Do you think that Valorant is in a good spot of like upholding that, you know, it's gunplay first, it's guns kill people the most, but, you know, abilities unchecked? Do you think that those are too punishing currently how they are?
I think they're in a fine spot right now. I mean, it's abilities I think are definitely a little bit more lethal, or well and more lethal than say CS:GO, which, you know, everyone likes to commonly compare the two. I will say it's sort of interesting to see how far they're going to go. Because like the most recent character, Killjoy, you look at her kit, the Molotov, the nano swarm grenade, it does a decent amount of damage. You can expect that to maybe kill someone, but then like things like the turret do very minimal amount of damage. In like 3-round bursts, I think they do like 12 damage. And
yeah,
depends on distance.
Yeah, very slow,
nearly
rate of
minuscule.
fire. You're almost never gonna die to that. But it could make you, you know, oh, now I have to shoot this turret. I have to shoot this boom bot. While I'm shooting that, somebody peeks, which I think, Yiska, you were getting at that really well, was just, you know, it's how do you use the tools to influence gunplay? But if you're just standing in a hot hands from a Phoenix from 100 to 0, well, you deserve to die at that point. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
I like the idea of being able to kind of control the map through threats. But yeah, I kind of am a little worried with how much of an increase I've particularly seen regarding Sova, regarding Brimstone, Raze in particular, even though EU gotta work on those rockets. But in general, like, seeing a lot of these ultimates consistently finding picks early or getting enough done to be able to like severely influence a round, that's where I get a little gun shy with. I don't think it's too much right now, but I can see as we continue releasing more agents, as more agents get paired together, as we kind of set up more and more combos and get a little bit more articulate with our ultimates, the game, it's going to be a problem at some point. I think there is like this weird 20xx rule with that, you know, we're going to get into, you know, just ultimates and abilities doing more than necessarily the game is intended to kind of showcase, where there is a world where we get away from just the guns and it's just spells. And that's really what kind of impacts the round rather than, you know, clicking the head.
And Morello does say in the next question that's just like, are there any abilities or kits that are a no-go in Valorant? And he replies, specifically, we try to avoid abilities that would remove the high consequence gunplay. Increased maximum health tends to be a no-fly zone, as do abilities that replace guns that aren't an ultimate like Jet or Raze. So
I think the key there is try to avoid, because I think this is like the theory that I still have with Breach. That's like, we haven't seen how disgusting he's going to be, and I still think we haven't necessarily seen that. I think in EU they're kind of the closest to it, but that's where I'm like, okay, this character is like the closest thing we have to specifically removing the high consequence gunplay, where I can only shoot once, my crosshairs all over the place, I can't physically like move my character, I'm stunned, I don't get to do what you're telling me on its face. How bad will it get? I don't, that's tough to say. But with the increase in Sova, with the increase in information gathering out of games like CS:GO or away from games or other tactical shooters, we're going to get to a point where Breach's stun is going to net kills more often than it doesn't. And that specifically kind of targets this sentence in general. So I hope that isn't going to be a continued mechanic throughout many of the other agents that will undoubtedly be coming out. So yeah,
I think
try to avoid is I think where I have my hangups.
Yeah, I think one of the things that they mentioned that sort of, and not that I want to get too far off topic with this, but they did mention something like 6 agents a year was somewhere in their projections. And while I definitely think, you have 140 plus champions in League of Legends to draw from as inspiration to use different abilities, I am not thinking that's too far out of the realm of possibility for them. I worry kind of the same of what you were saying, is that like, okay, if we're releasing 6 champions a year, like one of them is bound to just completely revolutionize, the meta when he comes out, or whenever that character comes out, you don't know what's going to happen. And I think one of the things that I've talked with some other people about is potentially exploring things like champion bans, or splitting the map into offense, defense sided picks, and then you would switch picks at the half, things like that. I mean, there's, for as much world of possibility there is for what could be, there's also, I feel, enough avenues that they can kind of circumvent it, or they could they could cut off the top and, we don't, okay, there's a couple broken champions out there, but everybody gets a ban, so like, you only have to worry about.
Should be able to kind of remove all the broken heroes, and I'd like to see, in 2-3 years time, when we do have like a wider roster of agents to kind of pick from, maybe we do kind of revisit the format. Maybe we do kind of allow more of a pick ban. Maybe we allow swaps at the half. Maybe you have a limited amount of swaps that you get. It would be kind of interesting. It kind of adds a little bit more dynamic feel. How would you apply that to ladder? I don't know, but I think I think people are a lot more aware of the player experience and like how that might operate in terms of like a UI. But I think it's almost overly so at this point, where I think players are like okay with some intrusion into like their flow of play. I don't know exactly how you want to kind of describe it, but I don't think like a pick and ban is like all that bothersome. It works in a number of games, a number of genres. So I don't see why it wouldn't necessarily work here. It'd be a little weird and something to get used to, because it's not something that you have had to get used to, but
there's definitely
I'd like to see that explored.
It would have to be on the face. I don't think you could just do like halftime swaps, right? Because the hero advantages on attack versus defense are just kind of like night and day for some, right?
Sure.
And like one of the big reasons that they're not OP is because they have to play on the other half of the map as well. But I think other than that, I would love to see, I think, more exploration into that. I jokingly put in chat, let's get a roll lock going.
Oh no. Oh jeez.
Oh, you only get one duelist.
Yeah.
I've already
2 Sentinels max.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we'll get to it, but I think like that's almost what people are kind of teasing in their minds with the op, is like, okay, do we limit it? Do we kind of impose like some sort of like gentleman's agreement where it's like, okay, you only get one? Is that something you can, or you want to see in the game? Is it that ridiculous to have more than one?
I don't know. You can get a second op by killing the other team's op,
I guess. I again, we'll naturally progress there, but I like the game. I think it's at an early stage where you can kind of experiment with some things and explore some different formats, and I think we'll probably have to see a change sometime in the future if they're really going to continue with pumping out.
It's also a really volatile space right now, right? Where things are really correcting themselves a lot of the time, and so I'm okay with not being too heavy-handed with systematic changes.
For sure.
Just kind of overall. There's one other thing on the Q&A, which I don't think is worth too much of a discussion, but I really liked how they positioned it. So it's kind of how has it been right now banning cheaters? How many have you banned so far? And we know that there's been 1,802 manual bans. And Arkham posted, What's that like? Personally, I like to start my day with coffee and a list of suspicious players sorted by most reported. I start drinking my coffee and go through the list manually reviewing accounts until I've had enough. Coffee, not reviewing. And I really like coffee, which is probably why I'm currently at the top of the team leaderboard for most accounts reviewed. I doubt I will hold the position for long, though, because we've recently expanded the pool of people investigating, so I have a lot more competition. I think
you know what this kind of paints in my mind? You know, those like I'm gonna get like the film term completely wrong, but like the weird like 60s detective movies where it's just like this weird noir setting and somebody like breaks into the detective's office like, Johnson, there's a hacker on the loose. The maps, they're all it's got like the weird like string, you know, everybody's strung out, there's coffee stains everywhere, multiple I don't know, that's just what I saw. Also sounds like he was injecting coffee straight into his bloodstream writing that paragraph. Very kind of scattered. I appreciate it.
Where he's got all the Charlie's got all the red lines up on the board. He's just freaking out.
That's what I envision at Riot Games, is everybody's just strung out on coffee, banning cheaters, and we're manually reviewing cases.
I kind of like that system, though. I found it interesting that they have like a little internal leaderboard to just kind of they gamify, leave it up to a game company to gamify their like reporting system. It would be really funny is if one of the people who was banning the cheaters created a cheat to get higher on the leaderboard internally while simultaneously banning cheaters.
Are you telling me to look into it?
I want to see.
I don't think there's a shortage.
I want to see a wall. I want to see a wall hacking leaderboard person out at Riot. Is what I'm saying. Cool. Anyways, that's Ask Valorant number 5. There is one other topic that I wanted to spend just a little bit of time on because it's been kind of hot lately, and that's just kind of the current state of ranked in general. So Asu on Twitter put a tweet out that has gotten a lot of traction, and then a lot of community members have kind of piled on with their thoughts. And Asu says, I love Valorant, but in my opinion, the current state of the meta and ranked are legit miserable to play. Might take a break till next balance patch. Strong legs. It's like, what are you disliking the most at the moment? Asu responds, FPS issues, teammates and me DCing mid-match, buggy client, 5 stack versus 5 solo, double op meta, judge over rifles, inflated boosted ranks, stream snipers every game, which we're not going to really talk about, killjoy nades killing my joy. So I think that there's like 4 that are really interesting. The first is stacks versus solos, which I have noticed as well. I don't feel like the client is doing a very good job at matchmaking me with the right. I don't think that they're living up to their promise of, if I'm stacking solo or duo, I should be stacking with other solos and duos as often as possible. I don't think that they've done a great job of that. Judge versus judge over rifles, I think, is another really interesting one. And then, of course, the double op meta, which
I don't. Maybe that's the meta at like high ranked, which again I don't follow, nor am I at. Let's be honest, I can't hit the broadside of a barn. But even just with the Valorant that I've seen, like double opping is pretty rare. Like it does happen, can't deny that, but calling it a double op meta feels strong.
I mean but I'm sympathetic towards it being a bigger issue in ranked than in competitive matches. Simply because theoretically, like, solving double op is not a one-man job.
100%.
And therefore, but then again, like, then the onus is on having a 5-man party, which of course then
kind of ties into
the
other part
issue. Like, but with rank queue stuff, I mean, they keep saying that they have increased the amount of like likelihood of being paired up with like 5v5s and whatnot, so even numbers. I think the problem is like what you could do is just increase the wait time, the average wait time, until a 5-stack will be queued up against individual players. But then you're disincentivizing actually 5-stacking. Like if it's just like a difference between like, I don't know, like 10 minutes and 30 minutes, then nobody's going to 5-stack anymore. When you kind of want that, at least Rise has communicated that they want that. So it feels like we need to think 3-dimensionally and actually add some other incentive or structure in order to make 5v5s very attractive to play, such as tournaments and whatnot.
Yeah, give me Clash for Valorant. Obviously, I think that's probably down the pipeline, much further down the line. But yeah, I'd love to see, get some people together, get some rewards, automated tournaments. It's been very successful in many other games, one that Riot Games creates. So why not try to implement the same technology here?
Do you think that?
I think it'd be.
Oh, go ahead, Mitchell.
Good.
Please.
Oh, I was just gonna say, speaking of other Riot games, League of Legends has 2 ranked modes. You have ranked solo duos where you can only queue up with one other person, and then you have ranked flex, which you can queue with multiple people if you want to stack up with your friends. And it's like, hey, if that's an archetype that works, that's an archetype that works.
Right.
Yeah, it's what do you guys think? Do you think that the Valorant games are too long, that we couldn't have like a 4-team bracket style in client thing where
No.
If you 5-stacked, you go into like more of like a little tournament style thing and you have your kind of own MMR there versus like trying to match make teams of 5?
Maybe making like the automated Clash style tournaments might be a little tough at like best of 3. And I really don't like
best of 3.
Yeah, it'd be tough. I think that would be where time constraints come into it, and trying to like schedule things might be a little difficult. But yeah, like a 4-team bracket, best of 1. Maybe there's a separate division for best of 3s who, a little bit more hardcore, giving that to the people might surprise, and maybe there's a higher population for best of 3s and there are best of 1s. Who knows? But yeah, I think that is a good way to Yiska's point, incentivize people to group together, to play the game, and have a lot of fun just in a pseudo team or fairly constructed team atmosphere, and play the game at or trying to play the game at a pretty not to abuse the word constructed, but coordinated level, let's say.
Right. I think there's always that notion of ranked and like competitive playlists are never going to be pro play. Like that's kind of like that's a given. I think it was actually a Riot employee that had like this really good article on it, just talking about how you're never going to recreate a competitive setting like constructed tournament play in your normal game or in your like ranked games, just because there's all the different factors that go into it. You're with different people, and so like the metas sort of develop within that atmosphere, and then the skill discrepancies and everything like that. So I think Clash is like the best way to try and like sort of reach towards that, while still allowing ranked to be its own beast, and to allow that to like contain its own group of players. Everyone understands that, like if you go like high into diamond, or if you like push a little past, you're going to start playing against 5-stacks, and then the game might just, like it might just kind of blow. But that's, you knew that getting into this. If you want to play with 5-stacks, like there's going to be Clash. That's where you should know that they are. It's kind of a hard issue to fix. And I think especially the more team play really grows in Valorant, it might even become an even more exhausted issue. But, there's a reason that you see like a lot of like pro players will just make a new account and they'll just grind back up to like up to all like, platinum diamond, and they'll just blaze through the ranks, because that's more fun if you're solo queuing than having to do the diamond slog of, if I rank up on this game, then I'm just gonna be playing against 5-stacks every game, and not gonna be as fun and once I'm up there. So
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah. Ziegler did respond on Twitter. And it wasn't a very insightful response, but did give it a response and say, hey, everyone, on the design side, we're currently analyzing the rank system top to bottom. We're looking into changes that will improve many aspects of competitive, but have not committed to any solutions yet. Thanks for the feedback. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
you can't really expect much else. Again, communications, I guess, good, but
an acknowledgement is better than nothing, right?
yeah, for sure. At least you're heard.
that could also just mean they're looking at like the rectangle stuff, which is Jesus Christ, is that counterintuitive?
More
That's
Tetris, more Tetris.
Some of the worst stuff I've seen in a
weird
ranking system.
The only thing I can say about it is it's creative.
It's true.
So it's you're thinking outside the box. You know, I think Mr. Bachelor over here might be able to align with that, right?
No.
Oh, yeah. No. All right. Very good. Very good.
This is on the level of artisanal nose picking.
Yes. Very. Your new article or the Riot Games Valorant?
Same level, same difference.
Very good. Okay, glad we met at the same spot.
Yeah. Anyways, that's kind of the updates on all the things around the game, state of the game type stuff. Let's talk about esports a little bit. A couple of new tournaments announced. The big one, though, Pop Flash Valorant Ignition Series event has been announced. It's going to be a 4-day event with 50,000 in prize pools and features C9, Dignitas, Envy, Gen.G, Immortals, and then Sentinels T1 and TSM. Quick question before we even go into that more. Dignitas hasn't announced a team, right? The only team that they did have their Dignitas
Their
female team,
CSGO
team, did play early on, but we don't know who Dignitas.
I mean, it has been intimated that it's going to be homeless by ESPN, I think.
Okay.
Oh, interesting. I didn't see that.
Yeah, the other day. I like it.
They didn't say for definitive, otherwise there would have been a report soon, but yeah, that's the rumor.
Interesting.
That's also, by the way, a very interesting development where they would just rumor on their show or like on Twitter.
Yeah. They just
that's interesting.
Like
are we not doing like 100% stuff anymore? No, that's going on my Excel sheet, dude. If you get that wrong, that's wrong. Very easy.
Yeah, I mean, it's unless you're like citing something from like a Reddit post or like, so and so told me that like Dignitas were looking at, I don't know. It seems it seems
Same
a little
with
bizarre,
Nitro, right? Like,
did they see that? That's a weird one.
I
thought they reported on it. Did they not?
Oh, bye, Joe.
Adios.
That was Yiska. Never mind.
No, that was Yiska.
Oh, I'm still here.
Sorry for the cameras are messed up.
Nice.
And then all right,
my Discord just
update?
like randomly restarted. That's very good.
Nice. We love that.
Expert.
We're talking about Nitro.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Nitro is maybe a little bit different. Like you can report that someone is in talks with something, right?
Yeah.
But like the face thing, how they first intimated that, like on some
that
backwater live stream, just talking about it. That
one felt kind of.
We know those guys. There's many names I could name right now, but
I was pretty like weirded out by that. I would expect like that to be a report, not, hey, elbow. Like I heard it's these guys. Like I don't know. Feels weird.
Yeah, that's a fair point by Dream. Like that was during the stream. Asuna was on the stream, and he said like, I heard this and this, and then Jacob was just like, yeah.
I mean, if it's just repeating that, I guess it's fair.
Instance,
yeah.
But in general, like these, I don't know, it's weird.
So, anyways, we've got that going on. We'll continue to see Sentinels versus TSM rivalry. Yiska, you still pulling? Okay, Joe, what?
Okay, I have a theory. Okay.
Okay.
You ready for this?
No, but go ahead anyway.
Hear me out. Okay.
I don't want to.
For those who partake in some Overwatches, Sideshow has been very active in talking about the game and analyzing it and creating content around it, which I would suggest people watch. I think it's very insightful, quite good.
Talking about another league, huh? Yeah, keep going.
I see a future for Sideshow heading up B-Site's Valorant tournaments and league if they so choose to do that. I see that.
See, he is Joe just doing the exact same thing where we just said,
I mean,
You're really
also
putting
not
that
in a
out there now.
publication,
You're
nor
really
is it a
putting that out
rumor.
there.
I just think it would fit, and it seems to make sense to me. I think it's speculative on my part. Not
is
reporting.
he
anything.
lazy though?
Not a
Yeah,
rumor.
actually, he
Maybe. He only is if he wants to come on and berate me.
If
Okay, this is a million inside jokes from an Overwatch podcast
Yes,
that
for real.
said
if
on a Valorant
Overwatch
podcast.
League loses Sideshow and Bren, I don't know.
I would
how.
love to hear them cast Valorant.
I
think it would be amazing.
I have, and it's amazing.
Mm.
I just like my Overwatch League though. I need it to
Yep.
stay intact.
Yeah, we'd lose like a really good casting duo.
And content generators, and probably two of, if not the highest social media impact
Sure.
on the competitive Overwatch scene.
100%.
I would say. So
But yeah, I think he's shown a lot of interest. I think he's got a good brain for it.
and they're making moves, man. They've been making moves
I'd like to see it. And if Monty wants to bring him on, call up the commish. Commish is gonna say, I don't know what he's gonna say, to be fair, but I would imagine that
Okay.
I think they'd want to bring him on. But I'd like to see that. I genuinely would love to see what a Bren, what a Sideshow, what an Uber. I think Uber didn't he kind of start in like CS, right? Not start,
well,
but
and he's on
like has CS experience.
He's I don't know if he's a permanent co-host or he's on Clutch or Kick
Sure.
quite a bit. So
I think a
all
lot of
those
the
guys are dabbling.
I mean, we
We'll have to
can
see.
talk about it on Crouch again, but I think these guys now have insane leverage.
oh,
So they're-
absolutely.
Like they positioned themselves very well.
Mm.
And, I mean, whatever scene gets those,
Hats off to you. You got
it's
some
like a top tier
bangers coming up.
esports casting duo coming your way. Yeah.
And to be fair, to kind of weirdly keep it in like the caster thing, like hearing Sean Garris and DDK come on and do some of the phase stuff, like that was. What are you gonna do? Like we're starting to get some like real big hitters. Like the scene, like the esports scene is really chugging along pretty quick.
yeah.
Obviously
To be
very
fair,
excited about that, but
That particular duo, at least DDK, is a bit of a gold digger in terms of just trying his luck, like playing scenes against each other. Like he has been playing that stuff very well. If people will remember the very old days, but yeah. Like them casting this doesn't necessarily indicate to me that they are serious, or DDK specifically, but we'll see.
I think if anybody wanted to lock down, well, how would you put that? I'd like to see both of them locked down for like a league of some sort, or somebody's like
Get away with leaks from me, especially from this game, very far.
whatever. You get the gist of it. Like some sort of tournament series. I don't know. Like you get the point. Like I'd like to see somebody like, this is our casting duo for this tournament. This is our in-house guys. Like they're gonna get the finals. They're really good. I'd like to see that happen.
Okay, let's
think they did a
climb
really
down
good
from
job.
the tangent tree, shall we?
Yes, please.
Whoa, look
Get
at
me outta
Yiska. You look at
There you go.
Yiska
He's got
shying away
things to
from a
talk about.
tangent. This is so.
Really good.
Anyways, on the Pop Flash side of things, I think the only this is every NA tournament that has invites right now and a prize pool are kind of seeing these same teams, and then the big difference here was Dignitas, right?
Yeah, I'll be a little upset if Dig is not a decent team, where we're just
Sure.
kind of bringing on a new team for the sake of having them be a big name when we have other teams that are probably just as deserving, if not more, just on the org side of things and maybe even performance. So hopefully that's like a decent team and just a 5-stack that you're porting over that you would have invited anyways. Yeah. I think either way, like even just ignoring them, one bad apple does not make a bad bunch, and this bunch is quite good. I'd say this is good. This is going to be a banger for sure.
Dream did ask about the format. It is 4 days. You have 3 days of groups, 2 of 4, and then from there, the top 2 in each group will qualify for a double elimination playoff between the final 4 teams.
Best of 2? Best of 3? Sorry.
It does not say on the release, as far as I can see. So that I don't know. But as far as the format, that goes. So that's the info that I think is out there right now. There might be something on the Wikipedia page I can maybe check in a second. 2 tournaments to be on your radars for this weekend before we talk about Allied. First one is the Cyber Games Arena Pacific Open. It's a combination of invited and qualified teams in one of a very few Pacific Valorant events so far. The hours suck for those in NA with matches starting at around midnight PST. What else is new? And I haven't found the actual stream link, but there's been some VODs up. I recommend using juke.gg/val to stay up to date on those types of tournaments and brackets and things like that. The other one is the 2020 Clan Masters. 2020 Clan Masters playoffs have started with some of the bigger organizations in Valorant South Korea, which is pretty cool. And matches are going to continue on Monday at 2 a.m. Pacific on twitch.tv/riotgames_Korea for the official channel. I don't think there's an English cast of that. So those are the 2 that I have seen that look really interesting, that have either big names or new regions with big names. So, yeah.
One thing to quickly note for any Overwatch and maybe some hardcore CSGO fans out there, obviously Lunatic High stepping into the space. Originally, I'd say from kind of more Asian and CSGO, or rather Counter-Strike fame, more specifically in the West, but obviously kind of picking up a lot more steam in Overwatch. They have 2 teams, Lunatic High and Lunatic High Flex. And apparently they're headed up by one of the old members of Project KR, who, if memory serves, did quite well in old school CS. So have a veteran of the scene kind of stepping in and coaching up some of the young players on 2 different kind of sister teams. Interested to see what happens with that. Maybe we'll have a couple good Korean teams come out of Korea, which is exciting, I'd say.
Yeah, it is actually really cool to get to see like FPS is picking up in a lot of the Asia regions, you know, like Southeast, Japan, all that. Primarily because it's usually a little bit harder to get first-person shooters to land there and to really like take hold. But now that, you know, like Overwatch picked up a decent bit of popularity, and then now we have Valorant seeming to be picking up a bit. I'm really curious to see if we'll see a lot of teams popping up, and then, you know, hopefully as all like the COVID things we're slowly starting to get past it, I'm really excited to see, you know, like our first LAN nationals, you know, like I want to all of these teams coming together. Biggest thing I'm always waiting for is LAN tournaments. And when you're talking about like all these other regions that are just bubbling and boiling, and everybody's just kind of, you know, cooking up their own teams. What are you going to bring to these international events? And I always just get excited about that.
Yeah, the prospect of having like a Worlds-esque event for something like Valorant, where, you know, you take a number of these Ignition Series tournaments and use them as qualifiers for something later on down the year. And you have, you know, multiple regions kind of showing up and representing their kind of home turf, as it were. And I'd love to see, you know, the team that qualifies from South Korea. Hopefully it's the best team, but, you know, all of these different teams coming over and competing against one another. I think that would be very, very exciting and fun to see. I think that's definitely something that I'm excited to see post-COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about Allied Esports Odyssey. Get to the main event here, but not really. We're going to start with qualifiers.
Yes.
So last weekend we had the qualifiers for the Allied Esports Odyssey, which is one of the EU Ignition Series events, and there's a €15,000 prize pool. Invited teams are G2, NIP, Team Liquid, and Giants Gaming. And then we had 2 qualifiers when Funflux Phoenix and BBL Esports. So,
yep.
Funflux Phoenix wasn't even Funflux Phoenix when they were competing last weekend, and they are now. So before we discuss kind of what's been going on with the main event, let's talk about the qualifiers and some of those teams. And this is the big reason why we wanted DoctorNo on the show. Because I just brought up Phoenix here, can you tell us a little bit about what's been going on with that roster?
Yeah, so it was pretty soon before the round 1 of qualifiers that we heard Zype Go Kill, which is the name that they were under going into the tournament. We just heard a couple rumors that somebody was saying, "Oh, this, that." FPX might be picking up Zype Go Kill. Like this was when they were Team Fabrican and another team yes. They were a little bit separated. They came together for this tournament, and then pretty much right after the tournament was over, I get on Twitter, and I think Ryan Central tweeted out, he was like, "Yep, FPX just confirmed that this team just made qualifiers." And FPX decided that they were going to be picking them up, which is super, super cool to get. My friend Reaper, he did a lot of research into it, and he said, like, one of the biggest things of EU right now is stability breeds longevity, and longevity breeds results. And the biggest issue right now is that G2 is the only team with a real amount of stability right now. Now TL is getting into the business. FPX just signed their own team, and they have enough money to give their team a good shot. And of course, the other NIP and Giants. So I'm really excited that we're going to see some establishment in the scene. Now that we're starting to pick up all of these extra teams, if these are players, like, oh, if it was just a fluke and this, that, you can say what you want. They've done relatively well, so I'm hoping for continued success, but there's always that level of like, okay, now that we're starting to see who the heavy hitters are, I think there were some criminal teams, or like some just teams that I absolutely should be there. I think Team Bonk should absolutely be in there. Project SW should absolutely be in there. I think Started From CS should be in there realistically. There's so many heavy hitters that just did not make it through this best of 1 format that was like pseudo double.
Yeah,
that keeps happening, right? And arguably it has actually killed some of the chances for teams like Fabrican, for instance, who, like, if you guys remember, they had like I think 3 Ignition series in Europe that they didn't get invited to. In other tournaments, got very far, didn't make it through the best of 1. Of course, you can argue, yeah, you got to win those best of 1s, but what about those teams that actually gain from playing these best of 5s, where they analyze or like grow within the series or whatever? Whether or not that's a thing right now, it is besides the point. Like, best of 1s just aren't a good way to filter through this. Now, of course, I'm also sympathetic towards the point of having to play like 9 maps a day, which is also a problem.
Yep.
So in a situation where you haven't maybe quite figured out who the good guys are, even though I think the argument is now weaker and weaker, where you should be giving out invites. Like, I understand the currents there, right? You want as many people to have a fairly easy entrance into the scene. You want, and maybe there are hidden gems there, especially in the scene where, like, esports organizations still haven't picked up teams. You kind of want the big hitters to be in there. You don't want to play that many games. Like it's hard to find a working formula. But I think as we progress, I think invites, especially also to the non-sponsored teams that are still doing pretty well, should have happened, right? Like, and I'm also not a big fan of like these organizers just like inviting their regional teams or whatever for some, like unknown
reason. Seeing Giants just kind of slotted in is a little bizarre. Haven't really.
I mean, during the replay was Force that was in there, which kind of like, I actually really like this to be Fabrican right now. Like,
or just there's like a good list of teams. I will say, kind of skimming through some of the VODs and some of the names brought up, big on started from CS, a lot of big hitters there. One thing that I'm noticing with how to put this nicely, A tier European talent, so like not the teams that have been signed, the kind of teams that have to go through the qualifiers. A lot of their issues kind of come from the fact that they really don't know what to do with their hands at times. They don't have like these kind of set strats. I think EU in general is a much more loose region. They seem to rely on decisive play calling and in-game leaders, and that's why I quite like BBL Esports. They kind of remind me of like a little G2, where they have like they have their initial play call and things might go bump in the night and things might get a little shifty, but they immediately can just like run a different play and just go somewhere else, and they seem very decisive in that way. Whereas a team like, what was it, Project SW? Oh boy. I want to like this team. Shout outs to Hardest and Wrath from the Overwatch scene. Good set of crew from that region, but if there was ever a team that really kind of embodied the I don't know what to do with my hands in this situation, just go ahead and rewatch some of their games versus FPX or Zypan Go Kill. Very clearly like two different kind of calibers of teams, but you go back and look at some of their best of ones, and they run into the same issue where they kind of just attack a site and you run into a wall or one too many picks, and then they just kind of freeze and their deer in headlights kind of shows. And that's not to say that teams can't do that or shouldn't do that, but it seems to affect them a whole lot more than a higher caliber team like an FPX, like a G2, like a TL, where I think there are some promising players on this team. Like I think Hardest does have a lot of promise. Dawn kind of stuck out a little bit, but I struggle to see them maybe as a team advanced. Maybe they kind of get picked apart, and that seems to kind of be the trend with EU, where you have a good core, but then they get poached and kind of combined with this other core, and it kind of works. FPX feels like a very good representative of that system. Very how would you put it? Like has a lot of skill. They're very good aimers. Zypan, I think, is criminally underrated, specifically NA. Like, not too many people are talking about him, but easily putting up big numbers for the amount of community credit he gets. Bonk, I'm right there with you, Mitchell. Like, I think Bonk's very, very good. Team Bonk in general, very strong.
They've just come short on a couple, right? They've been like one match short on like the last 3 or so weekends of tournaments, I feel like, where they're just like, they're in there, they do relatively well, and they just fall a map short.
I also say like this is a team where like I really appreciate the hustle. Like their also their management side is like very like attentive towards like getting their name out there, and they know it's like an upwards like endeavor to try to get sponsored in EU, especially if you're not like the best team. And I really appreciate that they like reach out, and then I think I even saw them on ESPN recently, had an interview with us. Like this is like I already told Salah this, like thumbs up for your hustle.
That's great.
What you got to do.
They're on boot camps and stuff. Yeah, they got a good head on their shoulders, and I think a good group of guys that obviously just kind of went through some roster turmoil. Obviously, kind of the bulk of their roster going to FPX, or at least a good portion of it going to FPX, including a coach, if I remember correctly. So I think this is a team that's going to need a little bit more time to kind of like get their feet under them again, and I expect them to be maybe not the next team picked up, but within that kind of qualifier division of teams where consistently placing through, getting into these tournaments and showing up big.
I would say like I was kind of like a little upset that EU teams weren't moving this quickly, but I'm actually like, especially FPX kind of shows that there are some potentially nuts rosters. Like the combination of these nationalities specifically was not apparent to me. I didn't think that would happen that way. But if it can, that's kind of nuts. Like Xiao, I always thought like Xiao was like a top 3 talent on his position in
Very
Europe.
Explosive.
Angel, like as an in-game leader, still pretty nuts fragging that he brings with. And then like paired with the best parts of the other teams.
Like, come on.
Like this is a really stacked roster, and it's only about time. Like this is legitimately a roster that could probably play up there with G2 and the rest of them, right?
They did.
Yep.
Yeah.
They did. They beat G2.
To be fair, that's the rough series.
That's my problem.
Is 4v5.
Yeah, I think
they took game 1, and that was 5v5, and then it was about like halfway through game 2, and that was, I mean, obviously condolences to David P and his family. You know, that's, as a competitor, that's never, you know, something you even think possible, right? When you're in that tournament setting, and you know, of course, I would never say for a second that, you know, like anyone would look like heartlessly on that loss. You know, like it obviously takes that away, but I almost don't want to do the inverse to FPX for taking map 1 and for being in a good position on map 2. Like, I think FPX as a team is proving themselves enough that I'm still going to praise them for being a heavy hitter.
Oh, sure.
You could never expect that, like coming for G2. And
this
I was and like, I mean, David P, he tweeted afterwards, he's like, yeah, I still plan to compete. Like I talked to G2 about it, and you know, like he said, he'd still like to be playing at the series, and you know, like, honestly, amazing stuff to him for being able to rally back from that. I don't even want to know what kind of strength that takes, but in the same way, you know, if he's going to step up and he wants to be treated like a competitor still, because I think that when you're talking about a pro player like that, if he's going to say, I'd like to be treated like a competitor, we kind of owe him that respect. I don't want to downplay anything he does from this point on, or upplay anything he does. You know, like treat him like the an accomplished player that he is.
But that's the good thing. I don't even think we need to speculate much on this specific series, because I think this FPX team, if not this tournament, most definitely in the future will prove to us that they're a top tier team. I think the makeup of this is just like it's almost like. Just like from the raw talent, I'm not sure if there is another team like G2. If there is another team that is as stacked as they are, except G2. That's what I mean.
I think you could probably make one, kind of eyeing some of the talent, looking at like started from CS and kind of picking through like the A tier of Europe. I think you could kind of put together.
Are you
like
saying unsigned or just total?
Yes, currently,
just total. Like, you don't think like Team Liquid, FPX are good enough to consistently compete with G2?
No, not. I mean, what I mean is, pound for pound, FPX is very clearly up there with G2, and nobody else is in Europe. For my money, anyway. Because I think, like, for instance, like, let's take Liquid, right? I think they honestly, like, there's still a massive mismatch in terms of maybe skill and also temperament and also philosophy on the game.
Yep.
And like that was one of the more interesting things to see from Allied Esports Odyssey is like, how does Liquid now switch up the roles once again? And I saw like Scream was playing a bunch of Reyna, where it's just like, yeah, this kid just wants to like frag and just play his game while the other passive, like methodical guys just do their thing. And it's like, it feels like, yeah, you can win with that, but you cannot become the best team in Europe with that approach. If
you had asked me or said this in June, I think I would have fought you pretty hard on it.
Oh, for sure.
But I think especially after their recent, I think after their recent performances and stuff, I think that's fair that we need to see more from. We haven't seen consistent Fish 1, 2, 3 since June.
No, and I mean, let's be honest. Like Fish 1, 2, 3 worked because they had Artis, who's like one of the best player, if not the best player in the world, and then also the profile of Artis as a player that he had, which by the way he, funnily enough, let go for G2 and is still excelling at the same pace, right?
Yeah, that's true too. That's a really good point.
So here's go ahead. I don't want to completely derail.
No, like my point is just like I think like if we also want to bridge it over to NIP, I don't think they have the firepower for opponent either to the degree that FPX has. Like in my mind, that's the hilarious part, right? Like when you guys remember like the conception of G2. Yeah, like they had 4 signed and then Davey P was not signed. And honestly, the first 2 events, I was like, yeah, that's a placeholder. He's not fragging. He's not doing anything. Now he might just be like either the best or the second best player on that team in the way he has been performing.
Yeah, this event in particular coming up big.
This is like G2 is stacked. FPX will be stacked. I don't think the other teams either have found like their fully stacked roster yet.
Yeah.
Or they will have to win by other means than sheer firepower.
Yep. So the fight that we could have if G2 seemingly kind of number 1 for everybody's list, FPX kind of probably coming in at a swift number 2. Who do you kind of give the nod as like the third best team? As
gotta give it to Liquid, right?
Yeah,
I'm more inclined to say Nip.
I like Nip more from a playstyle perspective. Like they are the smarter team. Yeah. They are more a cohesive team. But based on results, like
it's tough to argue the result.
We play, right?
Let's see.
And that went in Fish's favor, or Liquid's.
I think that one of the other things is like, who am I taking in a best of 5, right? You know, because you mentioned earlier like mid-set adaptations, and I think as the game develops, those are going to become a lot more relevant. And I'm really curious to see. In that aspect, I think I like NIP slightly better, which is kind of getting where you were at of like the way they operate as a team and their approach I really enjoy. But I think also on the subject of just like pound for pound firepower, and like I want to circle back to Team Bonk because I think Safe and Yassine are such monsters. In a world of EU where all of your top fraggers are, or NA, you know, it's the Jet show. In EU, it's the Raze show. You know, Zypin go kill. He is like 50 some odd games of Raze deep at this point. He is always going to be running it in on you. He does not seem to carry. And then you have Yassine and Safe, who, you know, Yassine also on Raze Jet, and then you have Safe who was doing it on Sage even. It didn't matter what kind of character you gave him.
Playing Viper, opping on Viper, mind you.
Yeah, he was opping on Viper. There were so many times. And I think that's kind of when you're talking about what you were mentioning, like, you know, let's bulk up this team. Let's get some heavy hitters. I want to look at Team Bonk as like people who have heavy hitters and off rolls, because I have never seen a battle sage that wants to op as aggressively as safe, and he's just fragging every round, you know. And sure, it's a qualifier, but you know, put that on a team that's missing a little bit of that firepower. And what are you going to start approaching some of these G2s with and these FPXs with?
Yeah, I think they feel, or they kind of mimic a lot of the early NIP things that I liked, where they were a little bit more creative. They feel like a C9-esque team that don't necessarily rely too heavily on firepower, even though obviously C9 has 10s and we all know what he can do. But they do have like these weird set positions, and they use utility in fun and interesting ways. And I get that vibe from Bonk and in particular NIP going into this event. And to Yiska's point about them playing, they will play later today. NIP and Liquid will play. Thus far, they have not met.
So who are you picking there?
I like NIP. NIP. I think Liquid's a little too straightforward.
You think they are serious against Liquid at the We Play was a NIP slip? I was setting this up for such a long time. So I was just sitting on that.
Yeah, hit him with the boo. Hit him with the boo. He deserves that one. Now, I wanted to come back on G2 and briefly talk about BBL, who I think have had quite a standout, much to Mitchell's kind of point. I think this team is the qualifier team to kind of look at. I think everybody kind of looked at FPX and was like, okay, if anybody's qualifying, it should be you, but like, who's your understudy? Who else is coming up? And I think BBL's really kind of surprised a lot of people, in particular playing their first game against G2 and running them extremely close. And I think G2 across this entire event, obviously with the tragedy happening with David P, it kind of puts an asterisk on this event. But I do wonder if G2 is slowing down a little bit. That isn't I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility. I think that they have played enough with the emotions and the respect levels in Europe, and I think they're starting to get punished with some of their aggressive ways, let's say. Do we have any thoughts on that? Where do we kind of fall on G2? Maybe just having a bad event. Maybe it's, just knock-on effects from, strenuous circumstances.
It's hard for me to say anything about G2 without a huge asterisk on this event. I do think that there is. I do think that there's totally a world in which I think other teams are improving and solidifying at a pace that outpaces G2, which has been playing together for a while now. Like, I think that there is that initial, you have that initial phase of figuring things out, and then you start to improve exponentially. Like, I think of Sentinels, their first couple of
100%.
Their first couple of tournaments.
You're
like, there's no way. You're like, oh crap, we just lost the Overwatch League MVP for a bot, and he just makes Overwatch players look bad in shooters and stuff. And then now you look at it, now you're like, well, Sinatra is one of the best sofas in the world right now. And so there's, I think, in the same way too, G2's been together now for a while. They've been competing consistently for a while. And but I think that other teams are together, and I think they're going to close that gap. But I don't think that any of them, just on that alone, I think can outpace or improve over G2. And if there's a team, it's FPX.
Yeah, that's kind of my nod as the team that could rival, and I think potentially will rival, much to G2's chagrin. The big worry that I have is how close this first match was against BBL. And this is a qualifier team who I think operates in a very similar style, kind of loose but direct. Not a fast team, but a decisive one that they're going to attack the site. This is the play. Oh, it didn't work, or we ran into a wall. Okay, we're gonna cobble something together and then just go for something else. And it seems to to be the deciding factor with them and a team like Project SW or maybe even Bonk to a lesser degree. I think Bonk probably being another favorite there, but yeah, I don't know. G2, I feel like slowing down. I definitely think it's a little column A, little column B. I think G2 slowing down a little bit. I think people are getting wise to their antics and just pushing out of spawns into spawns off of defense. Like they're quite the aggressive team. Feel like they're very momentum driven. Once you give them an inch, they kind of take a yard. And for a Turkish team to kind of come in here and give them a serious run for their money, I do wonder if a team like FPX, yeah, give a team FPX, a good day, they eat their Cheerios, get them Wheaties going, might have a Sentinels TSM style rivalry on our hands. I think it'll be good for EU in particular. I think G2's due for a loss.
I'm looking back though through some of their results in the past, because I'm trying to think, because it's weird because I think you're right, but at the same time I think that G2 is a team that outside of like very early on bracket matches and like top versus bottom group matches and stuff, they generally play teams close but in control. If that makes sense, in the sense that they are 13-8 to 13-10 team and not a 13-5 team, if that makes sense. And I'm just kind of looking through, and it's kind of, I would have to do more like diving in to see if that actually tracks or if that's just not just some like confirmation bias or whatever. But they're not really, I would say that I don't know that a team, it's like the Overwatch. There's close 3-2s, and then there's not close 3-2s. And I don't know if I've ever looked at some of these closer matches by G2 and ever felt like G2 is out of control. Even on like I have to go. You make me want to go back and watch against BBL. Because that is one that I didn't see, but
very losable in some of these. Like coming back from like a severe deficit, I probably get the number wrong, but looking at like 6-1 odds, well not 6-1 odds, but like 6-1 like round differential. I think on Ascent in particular, I think.
Well, like, with FPX too, they were up 5 maps or 5 rounds.
I think this one might not be the kind of smoking gun with G2, obviously because of what happened with David P and that, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see them continue. I definitely have to give them some sort of leeway in regards to that, because obviously it's tough to kind of keep everything in line, and that's no disservice to him. That's an entirely extra mental tax that you kind of have to like have weigh on your shoulders. So I think he's playing extremely well, even disregarding that. But we'll have to see. I think G2 might just be having even a slow event. I think this is the type of game that you can just say, hey, bad event. We'll have to check them over the next like 4 or 5 different tournaments. Give them a slew of FPX, BBL, NIP, see how they do, and maybe be able to kind of parse something from that.
I don't think G2 has ever lost an event that they played in, right? Nope. And I think that they've only lost 1 series, and that was this past week against FPX. I think I have to double check if there's any. No, they did lose. Any loser bracket stuff, yeah. But it looks like if I go into matches, it's all green except for the one against FPX.
Yeah, I think another interesting point about BBL taking it that hard to G2 and really pushing it against them is that I feel like BBL are also kind of a team that's not like a 13-2, 13-5 team.
Sure.
A lot of what I saw in the qualifiers, even in their qualifying match, like the finals, they went to overtime both times, and they won it 14-12. I think it was both both back-to-back games. And against Purple Cobras, it was a 9-13. It was like, it's one thing to say, oh, FBX beat G2, and like you look at like the heavy hitters, the entry fraggers, just the pure raw like skill that they bring to that table, and they say, yeah, they just ran in and started running amok, and jumping on the bed, tearing down the walls, everything like that. That's one thing to be that snowball, but then it's another thing, I think, that BBL were able to take it to G2 in their own fashion. And if that speaks anything to a level of consistency, that makes me very hopeful for BBL going forward. Is, like, if this is something you can pull off by playing G2's game and saying, okay, you guys set the rules, totally fine, we'll play your pace, but we're just going to make you work for it. We're going to try and be better at it. Couple scrims later, like a couple tournaments later, I wouldn't be surprised to see BBL showing up. And huge props to Turkey. They love BBL esports. They had like 2 to 3K viewers pretty much the entire qualifier. They cheer on their home region. I love to see that kind of backing. And so it's not like BBL don't have the confidence behind them. They know that they're carrying their flag proudly throughout each of these games.
Yeah, they're running everybody close. Like, props to them. I'd like to see them continue to be invited, maybe even to some of the smaller, not cups, but a little bit smaller tournaments that aren't necessarily clogged up with your nips, your TLs, things of that sort.
We kind of talked about like this idea of just like putting teams together, right? Like for the best parts. Mitchell, in your estimation, who's like the part you want to pick for BBL?
For BBL, I don't know if you pick apart this team.
Okay. Interesting.
And I mean, obviously, there is, of course, one of the big issues that will be present in the EU is language barriers. And of course, like it's not that it's you can overcome that sort of thing. Plenty of teams have proven that already.
FBF,
but
there is a ton of Turkish teams though, like just like from memory.
Yeah. And I think for a team like BBL, you could ask the same question. Oh, if you were going to pick apart G2, who would you be taking? And when you look at them on paper as like, okay, here's your whole team, there's no one that I look at and I'm immediately like, oh, well, if you replace these two with these two, this team would be objectively better. Like, I think there's a lot of team cohesion that goes into it. And when I look at BBL and I'm watching them play, of course, I would need to I would need to wait for player interviews and to kind of get a little bit more on the individuals before I could say this definitively. But when I watch them play, I always feel like I'm watching everyone kind of has their role to play. And, where I think that differs is I'm looking at a team like started from CS and you're looking at Happy. And I'm like, Happy is like the all-star of this team. Not to say that there isn't talent on the team in its own right, but I look at Happy and I immediately say, I'm like, yeah, he's like, you could probably put him pretty much with anyone. He has years of tournament experience from CSGO. He's played on different teams before. He's overcome language barriers before. I think he can make any team work. And I think that's important when you're talking about picking apart players. So I would need to do a little bit more research on the individual players of BBL if I could ever get translated interviews and stuff like that. I would love to get to know who they are. But BBL is actually one of the teams I would say maybe you want to stick together. I think if you're going to be picking from like the bottom end, if you're looking at Bonk, I think Yassine, Safe, and Bonker, you might need to keep these guys all together. I think Bonker's a great in-game leader from what I see. I think he does super well on Sova because of that. The amount of information he gets, and then Yassine and Safe are just monster fraggers that I think you could slot in with multiple teams. But again, partially speculation. I don't want to say anything too definitively because I've personally never played in years of competing. I haven't played in any team games. I did an online tournament in CS:GO once, and it was like I was like a play-in, and the amount of like meshing and teamwork and understanding of who you can rely on that I know from all through the years. One I would always think back to, actually, old C9 roster, Skadoodle, when he was like the best opper in NA and Cloud9 wasn't even like was still like losing a lot of games. I always look at Ska and I always think to myself, the role he plays meshes very well with people. He's very quiet. He doesn't say a whole lot. He does his job and you can depend on him. That's what makes him a great player. When you're looking at all these teams where I don't know the individuals that well, I'm really curious to see, where's everyone slotting in? What are you, what are you offering to this team? Are you Mr. Consistent? Are you the rock in the solid place so that players like Zypin can feel like, yeah, I'll double blast back in. I will go for this frag. I will send it on the entire site. Come challenge me, like Zypin go kill doesn't get to go kill if the rest of the team is not willing to work with him. So there's trust levels there. And I always worry about breaking that kind of thing up.
Sure.
I like that. I get that. I think, yeah, it's a little bit early too for the chapter of BBL to break them up. I think they've only been as a full squad, right, since the beginning of, a couple of them played on CNED together, and then a couple of them played in an early tournament in July, but otherwise their official tournament together as a full 5 squad has just been last weekend and this weekend. So we'll have to see what comes from them. We do need to get out of here, though. Mitchell, thank you so much for hanging out with us on this one. This was a ton of fun. Learned a lot. Thanks for bringing your expertise from the Allied Esports Odyssey and just esports in general to the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
Can you any shout outs? Where can people find you? Give us all your socials and stuff like that.
So if you would like to follow me on Twitter, I am at _DoctorNo_, and I will tweet about pretty much any esport. If you like fighting games, I will give you all the fighting games content you can want. If you like League of Legends, that's going to be up on my Twitch tomorrow night. So 9 p.m. PDT. So if whatever time zone that works out for you, it's at, I believe that one is at Doctor__no. So there's 2 underscores. It's either on the outside for my Twitter or it's on the inside for my Twitch. And if you guys are interested in following the Japan League of Legends scene, I am going to be doing as much introspective. It's playoff season, so I'm going to be catching everyone up on what's been happening, all the storylines, everything there. Also, might be looking at more Valorant casting in the near future. One thing I do want to do is VOD review. So if you guys are interested in a little bit more analytical content, I'd be happy to offer you guys that one. Any last shout outs? I guess I would have to shout out my friend Reaper. He does a lot of like analytical content as well. He's somebody who's helped me out a lot with like educating myself going into these tournaments. And he does like esports recaps of the week. So if you guys are interested in that kind of content, always want to give him a shout out because he does amazing work. And he is actually he was actually an avid listener of you guys before I got in, and it was a couple episodes ago. He was like, hey, you should check out Spike Drop. They do this really good podcast. They used to do an Overwatch podcast, and I was like, I'll check these guys out. Yeah, and I was really in tune with what you guys were doing, and I thought I love your guys' production, and it's actually been an honor to be able to come on the show with you guys.
Oh,
love chatting.
Well, dang, now we have to come have you back.
That's the plan, yeah.
I would be happy. I'd be more than honored. Whatever my next tournament is, I'll be sure to give you a guys call.
Awesome. As we sign off for the week, big thank you to the new subs, Skeptical, Cly, Bjorn, Suds and Bubbles, and Pin to Paper for the subs. Thank you so much. Follow the show at Spike Drop everywhere. Just spike drop. It's spike drop everywhere. Yiska, really quick, shout outs for the week and where people can find you.
Well, I'm being paid for stuff that I can't believe I'm paid for. So just check GG Recon.
I can't believe they're paying you either for
yeah, well,
for that.
His coworkers can't believe that he's actually getting paid for this.
That's the thing about livesmanship. You got to be paid for play, and then you got it.
Lifesmanship.
Nice.
Are you a lifesmanship expert?
No, because I will probably be held for like 1 more month until people like get like fed up with me, and then it's once again searching.
Joe, what about you, man? Shout outs to the week. Where can people find you?
You can find me on the socials everywhere in the usual places. I haven't really put in too much thought this week in terms of content. So yeah, get some Overwatch, get some Valorant. Who knows? I saw an interview with Thorzane. Shout out to TL.net. If you're back from the StarCraft days and wondering what the hell happened to Thorzane, go check that out. There's my shout out. Go read TL.
Nice. All right, we'll be out of here. We're out of here. We'll see you guys next Friday for another spike drop. Enjoy the esports over the weekend. And if you are a croucher, we'll see you Monday for another episode of Tactical Crouch. Bye.
Bye.